Keir Starmer's not going to give you one.
Well, exactly, and therefore you have to do as many countries have done before us, Andrew. You've got to put a ballot box opportunity in an election and unambiguously look for a popular mandate in an election for independence.
At a time when the SNP's on the back foot at the moment, or the nationalist cause. It's more difficult. That's my thing. You had your chance. If the big battle in England is between Tory and Labour, the real fight in Scotland is between Labour and the SNP. Of course, they're not the only kids on the block. Tomorrow, Alex Salmond's breakaway Alba Party will launch its election campaign, contesting 19 of Scotland's 57 Westminster seats. Alex Salmond isn't in the running himself, but he's here in Times Radio and joins me now. Welcome.
Welcome. It's Alba in the Gaelic.
How do you pronounce it?
Alba in the Gaelic.
Alba,
Alba in English. It's a soft pronunciation from the Gaelic. Alba in the Gaelic, Alba in English. It's like Paris and Paris.
So you can't say Alba?
Well, you can. That's the same way as you can say Paris, which I know is well beloved to you, Andrew.
Well, thank you for that. We're never short of getting a little bit educated here on Times Radio. Now,
I practiced when we launched the party back in 2021. I practiced for a week, just to make sure.
Right. Let me ask you this: in this election of 2024 for Westminster, you're pretty much an observer in this campaign. You're a spectator, aren't you?
Well, I mean, Alba's not a spectator. We've got 19 candidates. This is our first ever Westminster election. We've never even contested a Westminster by-election before. And we're also backing, very appropriately, Angus Brendan McNeill in the Hill in a Year.
As an independent candidate.
As an independent candidate, but we're backing him because he agrees with us on the Constitution. So, I mean, 20 candidates across Scotland. It's a goodly number for the first time up.
19, I think, unless you've had
19 plus Angus.
Oh, I see. But he's not running on your party ticket.
No, we'll call it 19 and a half.
But at the risk of being a little bit miserable, and you know that is not my normal disposition, I mean, you're not standing yourself, and at the risk of being rude, you are the Nigel Farage of the nationalist movement. You are the big figure there. Don't speak to your lawyers. You're only doing 19 out of, 57 seats. Honestly, I mean, you're not likely to win any, and you could lose the two MPs that you have since they're the ones that defected from the SNP. So there's not a lot in this for you.
Well, cautionary note. I mean, Neil Hanvey won his seat in Kirkcaldy. That's Gordon Brown's old constituency as an independent nationalist, not by the SNP. That's just in 2019. They disowned him in the middle of the campaign, but he won the seat anyway. And Kenny McCaskill is standing on a Save Grangemouth ticket in Alloa and Grangemouth. That'll be a strong campaign, and we've got 6 parliamentarians, former parliamentarians from Westminster and
so what's your target?
How
many MPs?
Well, our target is to make every vote count for independence. We're trying to register votes because our big election, Andrew, to answer your question
of course,
about me,
is coming up.
Is 2 years' time in the Scottish elections where I've already declared my candidacy for...
you have indeed, for the North East of Scotland.
For Banff and Buchan.
So I'm going to come on to that.
As was and is now Banff and Buchan Coastal.
Let me be boringly chronological, though. Let me come on to 26 later. Let me stick with 24 for the moment. Is it not true to say that the SNP are to Scotland what the Tories are to England? That both are cruising for a bruising? And how bad will it be for the SNP?
I see. You can't take Paisley out the boy. Cruising for a bruising.
It's an American expression.
Yes. They're aiming for a claiming then. And unfortunately, I think that's true. And I think probably the biggest talking point of this election now, yourself and John Curtis have just been talking about it, is there going to be a realignment of the right in English politics? Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that the biggest talking point emerging from the election, or at least one of them, will be, is there going to be a realignment of the national movement in Scotland? Right,
but for the realignment of the right to happen that people are talking about in England, a lot of the assumption behind that is that, the Tories are reduced to a rump. Yeah. Whereas... is there a danger of that happening to the SNP in Scotland?
They're in danger because they're not giving people a reason for voting for them. The SNP over the last few years, I mean, not when I was First Minister, but in more recent times have a very indifferent record in office. But they're also not fronting independence as their major campaign point. Now, why it's important is that at the end of the day, what motivates people who believe in an independent Scotland passionately to go out and vote in an election is if a party is fronting up independence for Scotland. Now, whether you like it or loathe it, that's what motivates people. The biggest danger for the Scottish National Party in this coming election is not people going out and voting Labour, it's people staying at home and not being motivated And that might bring about, it might turn a bad result into a very, very catastrophic one.
But if there's, right, so given that prospect, I mean, aren't you kind of nudging it in that direction? Because 8 of the seats that your party's contesting are where the SNP are on a knife edge, either with Labour or with the Lib Dems. I mean, you're going to make it more difficult for them to win these seats. You split the nationalist vote.
Well, we look at it a different way. I mean, what we're looking at is 50% of the population, more or less, saying they support independence, but now less than 30% saying they're going to vote SNP in the election, which means there's 20% of people who are either going to stay at home or going to vote for a unionist party. Our appeal is to these 20%, if you like, the disaffected independent supporters who don't see anyone in this election saying, vote, put your cross in the box for independence, make your vote count. So therefore, our appeal is to motivate that independence vote as opposed to splitting it.
But you will split it.
Well, Andrew...
I mean, that's inevitable, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't think...
I mean, just as Reform is splitting the right-wing vote in England.
But they've got a different attitude to the Tory party than we have to the SNP. I mean, what we look to is the independence referendum of 10 years ago, where the percentage turnout was 85%. We're looking at an election in Scotland where the percentage turnout might be 60-something%. And we want to get these people who finally in 2014, as somebody once said to me in Dundee, in a long queue of people queuing to register to vote, he said, we're here because finally there's something worth voting for. We're trying to give these people something worth voting for again, and admittedly as a preparation for what's going to happen in 2 years' time.
Has John Swinney been an improvement on Humza Yousaf?
I mean, I tend not to comment on what other parties' leaders are doing. I mean, I don't think he handled the Michael Matheson thing very well. I mean,
this is the man who had his iPad abroad and racked up an £11,000 bill.
John Swinney was both my successor and my predecessor back in 2004. And I saw in that indecision, making the worst of all possible decisions, making a bad situation even worse, something of the old John Swinney, which I recognised from before. But look, the SNP's problem is not that it lacks talented people. They have talented people in the ranks, but for some reason, they've decided neither to engage in, prioritise, or rethink the independence proposition for the modern age. They're still stuck way back and are not even fronting it up in this election. That's the problem.
You say your sights are not so much on this general election, but on building what I think you've called an independent coalition for the 2026 Holyrood elections. But is that realistic? I mean, the way things are going, the SNP look like they'll do pretty badly in the general election. They could lose a lot of seats. You yourself have said their record on Scottish domestic affairs is not the best. They could also lose a lot of seats in Holyrood too in 2026.
Well, let's say
this coalition might not be very broad.
Well, let's say they've got 60 plus just now. Let's say they lost a third of them and got 40 plus. If Alba can get 15% of the vote on the second vote, the list vote, the proportional vote, then that would give us 20 to 24 seats. If you add up 40 plus and 20, then you get a majority in the Scots Parliament. I'm merely making the arithmetic point that the SNP could go back and because of the proportional system, for a relatively modest vote in a proportional system, a new party, an emergent party, an insurgent party like Alba can actually gain a lot of seats.
But as you know, politics goes in cycles. And the SNP and the nationalist cause have almost kind of dominated Scottish politics in modern times, despite the referendum result in 2014. You do get the kind of feeling now that, I mean, that was then and this is now, that you had your chance. It didn't work, and it's pretty much over for the foreseeable future.
I remember that old Edinburgh phrase, you've had your tea there.
Indeed. You've had your chance.
Yeah, but everybody deserves a second chance. I mean, every party and every nation. So I think we'll get another chance. But you have to make it the priority. Why have the SNP done so well since 2007? Because each election in Scottish politics has been dominated by the constitutional question. In this election, the SNP have allowed the constitutional question to not slip right off the political agenda, but way down people's list of priorities.
But you say, you have to make it the priority. But if you ask Scottish voters, list your concerns, what's really worrying you, It's not independence. It's way behind health. It's way behind education. It's way behind housing. It's way behind the cost of living.
But as you and I both know, the holy grail of pursuing constitutional politics is to link your constitutional aim to the bread and butter issues of social and economic progress which concern people the most. That we've managed to do in the national movement for, well, basically most of the last 20 years. But unfortunately, in this election, the SNP have taken their foot off the independence pedal.
But what would you do for independence to achieve it that the SNP hasn't done?
Well, two things. One, if we were fortunate enough to emerge as that strong left arm of the independence movement and the coalition government, then we'd reintroduce some adults back into the room in the Scottish Parliament and some competence into government to reinforce the confidence of the Scottish people. And secondly, in the absence of a referendum, because, given the SNP's huffing and puffing for the last 10 years, Westminster are not going to offer one.
Keir Starmer's not going to give you one.
Well, exactly. And therefore you have to do as many countries have done before us, Andrew. You've got to put a ballot box opportunity in an election and unambiguously look for a popular mandate in an election for independence.
At a time when the SNP's on the back foot at the moment, or the nationalist cause. It's more difficult. That's my thing. You had your chance.
But how do political parties get off the back foot onto the front foot? Well, the first thing is a psychological thing. You've got to get yourself to take the initiative. Now, I, if I may say so, I helped turn a small party into
Indeed,
a very
you
large
did.
party in Scotland. It took the best part of 20 years. I'm going to try the same thing again, except I'm hoping for a much shorter time scale.
But in your heart of hearts, are you not privately reconciled to the prospect that the chances of independence in your lifetime are receding?
Andrew, I'm not going to say read my lips because that's always unfortunate, but just listen to me when I tell you I intend to lead Alba into an independence coalition in the next Scottish Parliament, in the next Scottish Government. And from there, face down Westminster in the sort of way I did before, with renewed vigour and learning all the lessons I've learned from the past and applying them for the future. That is my intent.
I understand. Okay. Well, I hope we see you before 2026.
I'm sure you will. And we'll have time to practice Alba.
Alba,
Well,
or
that's good.
Alba, or Alba,
Or Alba, if I think
All
we shall. That's very good. Fantastic, Andrew.
Alex Salmond gives elocution lessons to anybody who needs them. Thank you.